Okay, we're recording. Hello, Rebecca. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Barry.
It's my great pleasure. My name is Barry Lenore with New Student and Family Programs. I am the Family Engagement Program Coordinator here at New Student and Family Programs, and I'm happy to introduce Rebecca Caldwell, our Director of Residential Wellbeing. And we're here tonight with Rebecca to talk about supporting your student families, your students' well-being during winter break, and maybe give you some insider tips. Who are we informing? You're the parents. You know that, but maybe you'll learn something by watching our little session tonight. Rebecca, I'll let you just take it away.
Terrific. Thanks, Barry. Thanks so much for having an opportunity to view this program. For me, this is a continuation of a program that I did for families early in August, which we called kind of Welcome Home and preparing to help your student flourish and be resilient as they arrive at VT. And so this is really kind of the opposite for us, and we're swinging it back to you and saying, welcome back home, students, and how to support your students' resiliency and your own resiliency and well-being during winter break. So in particular, I'm going to just remind you of a couple of the resources of the residential well-being model, especially if you aren't real familiar with it yet. We'll talk about kind of tips to both support and kind of cohabitate with your student during winter break after not living together for a while. And then maybe most importantly, talk a little bit about kind of preparing for a spring return and conversations and resources to share with your student to help them kind of step off on the right foot when they come back to us here in Blacksburg in January. So to start, I just want to make sure to back around and talk a little bit about residential well-being. VT has taken a very new approach to supporting kind of today's college student in a residential living environment. And we call that, both our department and kind of that collaborative movement in our division, residential well-being. We have a really large residential campus, over 10,000 beds. And so we really thought about what would it take to support today's student in such a large environment. And so the first thing we did was kind of divide our campus into 5 communities, which we thought made a really reasonable amount of people to take care of. And then we assigned a new type of professional staff to support them. And so in your students' area here on campus, there is kind of an air traffic controller. We call them the managing director for residential well-being and inclusion. They are kind of minding the big picture of the culture and how we're caring for their students. And they are supported by a team of professionals. Every district has a case manager that's also part of the Office of the Dean of Students. And so they support our students, especially with mental health concerns or complex cases where we're going to bring maybe a variety of resources to bear. And so they help our students. We reach in early and we get students connected to resources, and for a number of them, kind of follow them till they're back on their feet. Every district has a health educator. We call it a coordinator for well-being. So they're helping our students really kind of learn how to improve and stay well in the residential environment. And that's everything from digital well-being to kind of daily tasks that keep your brain going, to mental health, to healthy relationships, to sexual violence prevention. They work together in their district to really think about helping our students. We know involvement is one of the most important things to help students strive, stay in school, and feel really connected to their institution. And so every district has an involvement specialist. We call it a coordinator for Experience VT. That's VT's language around kind of the holistic VT experience. Every district has a graduate assistant that works with their managing director to especially focus on inclusion and belonging. And every district is connected to an embedded counselor. One of our most important partners in residential well-being is the Cook Counseling Center. And as we thought about supporting residential students, we thought, why not bring counselors right into the residential environment? And why not have them there at the time that students are most likely to need them? So we have a team of counselors who actually work on the residential campus from 2 to 10 in the evening, and they have a traditional day on Friday, but Monday through Thursday, they're with us 2 to 10, and that's a great fit for us. You know, a lot of folks make it through the day, and in that earlier mid-evening, they realize, like, I'm not doing very well. I'm really, you know, need a little extra support tonight. And so our embedded counselors are there for our students, and they're out and about with us doing all kinds of programming about kind of mental wellness, and how to continue to learn to take care of yourself and be well on campus. So that's the professional staff that supports your students from residential well-being. We also do have students, upper class students, who live alongside your student, to support them and to help keep them healthy and to be right on scene to respond to immediate needs. You're probably familiar with that concept. Most campuses call it a resident assistant. Our program is very similar, with a couple of things that are a little bit different. Instead of asking our resident assistants to be everything to everybody, we said, what is the most important thing we want students to learn while they live on campus, particularly in the first year? What are their most important tasks? Where do they need the most support? And we narrow down onto what those are. So we have 3 types of student leaders. Some of them focus on well-being. Some of them focus on creating inclusive inclusive environments in our residence hall, and then the rest of them focus on really meaningful involvement on campus. And so those 3 types of student leaders, every resident has access to at least one of those types. So instead of kind of a single RA to the 30 or 40 kids who live around them on their floor, every student is being either supported by a trio that has one of each of these types of student leaders, or kind of often, particularly in our residential colleges, it usually ends up being a foursome, but each foursome, again, has at least one of these types. And so your student has the opportunity to get to know a variety of student leaders, to be supported and make a maybe good connection, the one who might have the most interests in common with them, or they feel the closest connection, but they're also receiving all kinds of programming from these student leaders based on their specialty area.
This is just such a wonderful model. And having been a student at Virginia Tech back in the Victorian era myself, and now a parent of students, it's just an impressive model. And I imagine it's just, things are so much better year after year. And this model is relatively new at Virginia Tech. What are some of the positive results that you're already kind of seeing as a result of the residential well-being team?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. You know, I think that we have found that our students do identify with a much higher sense of belonging to the campus community. We've really improved they're telling us that they've had meaningful engagements with people or groups of people who are different than them. And probably the most tangible outcome for us, and it is all of these things together, including our partners at Cook, is our level of kind of campus-based major mental health crises has dropped tremendously. And so I think what that means for us is that that's appropriate service availability, together with a model that's really dedicated to wraparound care, follow-up care, and identifying problems early, have meant that situations that could have turned into a crisis later, we're wrapping our heads around much, much sooner. So we've seen some very nice positive outcomes. Students are coming back to programs, which I think is something we lost during the pandemic. It had been fading over time. Week to week, as I sign off on payments, and I'm looking at the attendance sheets, I can't believe how many students are coming out to programs in the residence halls. And that means not only kind of they're meeting fellow students, but also almost always means they have a meaningful connection with a student leader who asked them to come to that program. And so we have really kind of really reaped the rewards of our focus on community and our focus on care. So when I spoke to families in August, I talked about supporting healthy transitions and building resiliency, and I'm still going to focus on that tonight as we talk. And so now we're talking about transitioning back from fall break. And so I kind of crowdsourced this conversation with my partners at Cook, with all the different content experts, with my folks on the ground. We talked a little bit about what do we think are some of the biggest challenges in coming back together as a family during winter break. And we have kind of a few tips to share with you. And number one tip across the board as I talk to folks is really kind of setting expectations as a family about what what it's going to look and feel like, and what you want from each other during the time in which your student has returned home. And so that can be a big part of that is actually probably revisiting kind of the rules of the road of them being in your home. And so it's probably likely that the last time they were with you, they had things like curfews, you had expectations for, when they were going to be in touch with you. You might have some other types of rules. And so some families will wait and not have an overt conversation about that. And then that first night your student goes, well, I'm going out. There's kind of this pregnant pause because no one has said like, well, what's that look like now that I've got a semester of college. And so whether it's kind of those kind of expectations or just expectations about what you're going to do together, which family traditions matter, what are your personal hopes about the time you're going to get to spend with your student, what are your students' distinct plans for those weeks, really talking about that out loud will really let you understand, okay, this is the rhythm of what we expect from each other during break, when we expect to see each other. It's kind of unset expectations are just setups for kind of resentments or misunderstandings. And so really encourage that conversation really kind of over these next kind of week and a half before they come back, or just kind of right away when they arrive. Another thing to expect is to expect your student to be exhausted, and not just kind of exhaustion because of finals, but just because of the huge experience that they have had from August to December. They have so much to process. They've been through so many different types of changes. They've learned to live and work and be with people in a new type of environment. And so that's a lot to take apart, and it's a lot of kind of overload, especially since your student may still be in that group that spent some part of high school in your house, right? And so that experience up to kind of living with 40,000 other people, possibly living in a residence hall with up to 1,000 other people, means that they've been through a lot of change. And another thing you might expect is your student may have a really high desire for privacy. You might see them kind of just really like looking for that space and time to really kind of be in their head or just watch TV or enjoy being in their room. VT is a totally traditional residential campus. Almost every single student who lives with us has a roommate, and they rarely have ever had roommates before, even their siblings. And so we are consistently seeing more and more students really struggling with needing and wanting privacy. And it's not, it just is kind of, about space and time to reflect or to recharge, especially if you're an introvert. And so don't be surprised if your student is like in their room a bunch, like just trying to kind of enjoy that. And that you'll know the difference between just looking for a little privacy versus being down, but just know that might come home with them. I think that this is a really great set of weeks to really help your student process what has changed in the last 16 or 17 weeks. And in the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about how to ask some of those questions in a way that helps your student kind of realize or reflect on their resiliency. But some common conversations or things that your student might be struggling with a little bit, or making sense of while they're home, can be friendships. The new ones they've made, are they the friendships they want? And what has changed about the friendships that they valued from before? Negotiating and relearning and wondering about what the basis is for their friendships from high school is probably maybe the second, possibly even the first time they've seen the friends they had from growing up. That's a big thing that people may really kind of struggle with when you realize sometimes being in high school with people was the thing you had in common. So they may be talking with you or needing to talk with you about that. Processing the habits that they picked up, while they were at college, or the ones that they really practiced this fall semester. Were they getting the sleep they needed? Were they kind of eating and moving their body in a way that helped them be academically successful, helping them reflect on, especially if their academics weren't everything the outcome of their academic work wasn't everything they hoped. How did studying work for you? How did you get your work done? What kind of style of doing work was great for you? Or do you love group studying? Can you really only study on your own? Just helping them make sense of what worked and what didn't work across this fall semester as they anticipate coming back in the spring. Can be a great kind of family student conversation. The other thing you're naturally going to talk about is their academics as they share with you kind of the final academic outcome of the semester, and that's hard. That can be a hard thing to help for students and parents to kind of make sense of. BT is incredibly rigorous, and so your student who might have had up to a 4.5 GPA in high school, or with you, might have worked their tail off and excelled, and that might look like a 3.1 here, which is a really, no problem at all in such a rigorous environment. This is not a grade inflated environment in any way, shape, or form. And so that's a good thing to know. Know that your student may be kind of coming up, they might have hit a brick wall at some point in the semester where the amount of work that it took them to excel in high school, wasn't the type of skills that they needed when they were here. And so they may need to reflect on that and make a different kind of plan for the spring. And some of you kind of may find that your students' your student semester was not good academically, that a whole variety of personal and academic factors may mean that your students coming back to you kind of in a different academic status. They may need a lot of support to kind of academically recover from fall, and that is really okay. VT has so many support systems for students who kind of get below kind of the GPAs and things that we need them to be at. And so, if that's something that's coming up, just helping your student understand, that there are so many routes back from that VT has so many resources, that you're going to be their biggest cheerleader as they come back and try again. And that, you can even look around on the website and take a look at some of those resources. And so we have students who graduate and are super successful, and their first semester might have been a disaster. And so it's okay, if you're there, and just know that we're going to partner with you as a campus this spring.
That's probably one of the hardest realizations to have, is if you've had some bad grades, it's a hard conversation to have with your student. It's a hard conversation for your student to have with you. It's hard for the students to admit that even to their professors and on campus. But if there's one thing that I've learned in my short time on faculty here, is that there are so many resources waiting to help your student. But it does require that first step of the student seeking out that resource.
Absolutely. Another really important thing we just really want to say to you is this was your transition too, right? And so a lot has changed in your life in the last 16 or 17 weeks, especially, if this is an empty nester situation, now you don't have young people in the house, or even if there are other kind of young people in the house, families are constellations, they're orbits, and they have styles and patterns. And when someone exits in a meaningful way, the constellation, the orbit changes, right? And so, you might find that bringing this person back in, it does disrupt, your family's kind of new style of working together, that even siblings might struggle a little bit. They're happy they're home, but there's been different patterns while they've been away, and that's okay. Also, not everything about having them home might feel great. If your student was what left all their clothes on the floor when they left you in August, it's a pretty good chance that all those clothes are gonna be on the floor in their room here at the end of December. And you might need from time to time to go in your room and remind yourself, remember, I'm happy they're home. It's okay. I'm happy they're home. Like, it's all right when there's struggles, to reliving with each other. And it's also all right for things to be kind of bittersweet sometimes, and to be some sad sometimes because you miss them so much, or to be dealing with different feelings because you see them changing. Like, both of you are having an experience this December, and honor that for yourself as well. And I'll talk more about that as we talk a little bit about kind of resiliency-based conversations. And so we talked a little bit about this in August, and this is a great time to revisit it. There's a lot for your student to process, and there are some real important ways to help them reframe that we know can help them feel resilient and to bounce back from any setback that they may feel like they experienced in the fall semester. And so, a couple of things I think are super important are just reframing any challenges or something they consider as a failure as normal. We often catastrophize. We believe we're the only person who had this setback. And so whether it's you sharing some setbacks you also had about that time, or setbacks about and people they care about and admire, just normalizing setbacks is just part of the process. It happens to everyone, and they just are just kind of, they're small kind of setbacks really on the way to failure. We sometimes learn the absolute best lessons and make some of the biggest changes about ourselves when something doesn't work out the way that we planned. And our students here at VT, they're so bright. They've been so successful. It's only a huge series of successes and positive things that kind of get them in the door here. And so some challenges are going to be brand new because nothing's ever been hard. I mean, for them, sometimes, many of our students have overcome tremendous challenge to be with us. But that, I think, goes together with kind of the next comment I encourage you as you talk with your student, is just to confront, perfectionist thinking. Sometimes the everything has gone in our objective opinion as adults incredibly well, but a student may really be kind of judging it against a really idealized college experience that they expected to have. So whether it is something like, the GPA isn't the GPA they wanted, or, they didn't make the volume or type of friends they expected right away, or their roommate relationship was meh, as opposed to kind of being a best friend. That kind of, those scripts in our head are some of the biggest things that get in our students belief that they're happy and that they've been successful in their first semester. So just remind, effortless perfection is not real. It's not something that happens. And you might think, I don't think I had as good of a time this semester as it feels like my friends did based on their social media. And social media it's a constructed and curated concept. And so, they may learn across winter break that the friend who looked like they had a perfect fall experience actually will confide all their challenges, but they haven't hit that yet coming in the door. And so that's an important one to just help them make sense of. And then that ties into the last kind of point on this slide, which is just one of, I think, our students' biggest challenges, which is this cultural thing that we have in the US, that we believe that you will have the best friends of your life in college and you will make them right away, and it will just be kind of this kind of perfect, it's the myth of magical kind of friendship that will happen for you immediately, and you will have your group by Labor Day. And so, if your students like, I've made some friends, or I feel like I've only made some acquaintances, they might have really felt lonely and may still feel lonely right now, to just remind them, the best friend you may have in college may be sitting next to you in your first class of the spring semester, but it is work to get to know people. It doesn't always click, and that doesn't mean anything about yourself, and just keep putting yourself out there until you kind of find your people. So I've done a ton of teaching about resiliency in my career and kind of what the skills are. And so I want to point out 3 of them, both for you and for your student. It's 3 of the big 4. I'll talk about the 4th at the end. But, we know that, we know some things that really lead to resiliency. And one of the most important things is self-compassion, to really encourage your student to practice yourself, that everything isn't going to be perfect, and it's going to be okay. When setbacks happen, you think, I've done the best I can. I care about myself. There's actually tons of research that people who are compassionate to themselves when things have gone awry are much more likely to get back up and try again, whether it's to get back on that academic thing or try again with a new relationship, to say, it's okay to hurt. It's okay if things don't work out. Other people feel this, and I'm going to be okay. It's one of our most important kind of experiences and perspectives that help people be resilient. The second is just really savoring the positive. I think this is a really good thing to think about your students' first winter break, is, to really, you might have some real big ideas about what's going to happen, and a bunch of that may happen, but don't forget the small stuff. Don't forget that when they sling their arm around your shoulder, like when they come downstairs and they have that bed head you hadn't seen in a while, all those little things, when you're laughing as a family across a meal, savor that. Take a minute and feel it with all of your senses, and think about how happy and lucky you are to have that moment. And those kinds of things might be the thing that you take away, or that really gets you a really happy moment during break. And same thing for your student. Talk about like, what's it like to be home? It's so nice to be here. It's so nice to see friends. Let's make sure to go to have your favorite meal and talk about how much we like it. And all of that's interconnected with kind of the third one, which is just sharing and expressing gratitude. This holidays are stressful normally, right? And now you are, reconstituting your family, and all kinds of things have changed. And so can you write each night 5 great things that happened? Can you really express gratitude to your student? Can you encourage them to think about, what they're grateful for? We know that is a tremendous, it has a tremendous side of happiness, and really bouncing back from setbacks is to remind yourself over and over again what you're grateful for. The fourth of the big four is mindfulness, which is a totally different webinar, but there's plenty of research that shows that these skills are important. And so give yourself these experiences and encourage your student and try to teach them how to have those experiences too. So kind of last thing I want to talk a little bit about is just preparing for your students' second semester. At some point, we will go from the I'm so happy to be here to starting to really gear up and think about the spring semester. And so, we have so many campus mental health resources. And so whether it's helping your student improve their mental health, whether they're realizing it is time to maybe look for a little professional support for a challenge that they're having, we have so many here at VTE, and they are kind of ever present. We have a real traditional counseling center. We have those embedded, residential counselors. We have a service called Timely Care, which has both kind of an immediate service called Talk Now and the ability to get free, a telehealth and video kind of based healthcare from licensed professionals in a traditional appointment style. That is a 365 service for us. And so if your student's struggling while they're home, Timely Care, which we ask all of them to put on their phone their very first night with us, is a terrific resource. It's going to be available throughout the winter break as well. Another great thing to encourage your students to do is revisit their roommate agreement. You probably might hear an earful about how it was challenging for them to have a roommate. This is a tough week here. My colleague from the counseling center who works with us here was telling me today that she was working with a student, and the student said, my roommate just breathing is irritating me, right? It doesn't mean anybody's a bad person, but we're done. They're real done, like living with this person, in many, many cases. And so if they've had challenges, ask them to revisit their roommate agreement in January, and to sit down and go, all right, we've got a semester under our belt, or if they've got a new roommate, they know what they need now as a student. So renegotiate that is a great thing to encourage your student to do. Coaching your student to advocate for themselves in the campus environment is a terrific thing to do. Think about what do you need to be successful next semester? How can I encourage you to seek it out on your own on the VT campus? As we talked about before, VT has tremendous academic support resources. And so if your student is kind of reflecting on, I think I might need a little more, or I wished I'd use those resources, remind them that they're ever present. And kind of lastly, don't forget to remind them of the value of campus involvement. And so, clubs, organizations, leadership roles, getting more involved in their major. There's so many ways to really kind of connect on campus. And we know it's so tied to satisfaction and belonging for our students. We have our website, Gobbler Connect, which has all of our student organizations and many student events, just kind of constantly streaming through that. They also have a second chance at something we call Gobbler Fest. So we have a huge one in August. They may have attended it, but there's kind of a smaller one in January. And it's another thing. If they're like, I tried a couple clubs, I really didn't kind of connect with anything, it's a good chance to revisit and relearn about those organizations. You also might talk, if your student is a sampler, they've been in 10 clubs this fall, talk with them about do you want to trim down a little bit towards your big commitments? Do you want to think about leadership? What does that look like? And so those can all be kind of typical tasks to have a successful second semester.
We heard at the Fall Gobbler Fest that, or Fair. Anyway, the big one on the drill field, most of the students said, I was only able to get around to just a few of the tables. There's so many more that I didn't see. This is their opportunity to maybe learn about other organizations and clubs that they still don't even know about. There's so much out there to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'll just kind of wrap my section to just say, I talked about at the beginning about all the resources that we have in the residential well-being department. We have three total departments that support your students' living experience here on campus, our housing services, folks that take care of our facilities, they do our assignments. If your student's in a living learning program, we have a department that focuses on that. And of course, our department, residential well-being. We have one common site. It's housing.vt.edu. You can find resources from any of the three of us there. And on that site, you'll also be able to find which of the districts does your student live with. And if you, need to reach out, you're not sure what your resource is, but you do know your student lives, for instance, in District 1, because that's the residential colleges. Up here, each district does have an email. And so you can kind of reach out to us if you've got concerns or questions, either about resources, about living in the halls, or getting your student connected. We are here for that and speak with many families throughout the year just to get their student to the right place or kind of disentangle a difficult situation. We're here for you we're to partner with you to support your student.
And Rebecca, that's what our office says about our family engagement. It's families as partners.
Yes.
And in 2023 and 2024, your student has more partners who've got their back than ever before in the history of Virginia Tech and universities worldwide. Rebecca, thank you so much for being with us tonight and for being part of the recording. And you're great. This is just great information. And I think our families are just lucky to have you and residential well-being and all these great resources. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to stop my share so you can move into the next part of the program.
Thank you so much, and good luck with your meeting tonight.
Thank you.
As Rebecca leaves, we have a student panel that are going to pop in, visible here. I hope they are paying attention. Oh, look, they are such a good student panel paying attention. We're glad to have them here with us tonight. Yeah, you're going to have to squeeze closer together so we can see the No Shave November on Seth right there. We've just spent some good time with Rebecca Caldwell, the Director of Residential Wellbeing, and we know that you were listening intently. You weren't at all goofing off in the suite. That wasn't laughter and indoor soccer that I was hearing. It was you studying and listening. We're really glad to have our student panel with us here, and at least as my screen shows, from left to right, we have Emily Martin, who is a second-year student here, correct, Emily? All right, we have Francisco, who is also a second-year student, and Francisco is also a student leader. In which dorm? Oh, we're gonna have to turn the volume on there.
I'm a student leader in a Hogue Hall, which is the main engineering dorm.
And for us parents who are from a previous era, Hogue Hall used to be Lee Hall. So yeah. All right. And then we have Faith Joris, who is in her third year here. And there on the end, the ear that we see, there he is. This is Seth Kogi, and he is a senior. So we have a broad spectrum here, but they have all been spending the week remembering what their first year at Virginia Tech was like, specifically their first semester and the challenges that went with it, but also focusing on tonight, what was it going to be like to leave and go to winter break, to where they were going to spend winter break with their family. So I guess we would, I warned them that we might not go down the line, but let's go down the line. We'd just like to hear first and foremost, do you remember back to being a first-year student? And, what was that like for you? What was your first semester magical? Did you meet your lifelong friends, or was it? So let's just kind of start with Emily. Tell us a little bit about your first semester.
I like to say a lot of like what Rebecca said, those myths that parents and families tend to kind of keep egging on with you're meeting your lifelong friends, all the best times of my life were in college. My first 6 weeks of college were anything but that. Which is why I'm so passionate about what New Student and Family Programs does now. So getting to kind of see the full 360 of that, to go from a place that was really difficult for me and now getting to lead students maybe out of that place has been really cool. But yeah, it was definitely a period of adjustment and a lot of personal growth.
Francisco?
Same question. My first semester was kind of like Emily's. I'm doing engineering, so mine's a bit more different program. I think it was a good first semester. Going back to Dr. Caldwell said, a lot of stuff that about the myths that I also resonated with and realized kind of as I went through the year. But all in all, it was a good experience that through like dedication and keeping your nose on the grindstone, everything worked out at the end.
All right,
Yeah.
Faith, first semester.
So my first semester, my first 2 weeks were especially rough, and I did call my family all the time, which actually really helped me. I feel like the biggest thing for me my first semester was that I had a lot of expectations coming into college, and especially at Virginia Tech, because I had a family member that went here, my mom did. And so I feel like even though like my expectations was not what I got out of the experience, I ended up being really happy in a way that I had never known. So a little rocky start, but I made it through, and now I'm really great and happy. So
Hey, Seth, do you remember all those many, many years ago when you were a first-year student?
It was quite some time ago, but I think a word that pretty accurately describes that first semester for me is stress. There was a lot of stress coming in for me being an out-of-state student and trying to adapt to an environment where I didn't really have any prior connections. And that sort of evolved over time into stress through my coursework, stress through my living situation, and eventually stress into finals week. But I think that it almost molded me into the person that I am today, because I was almost kind of set out to the wolves to experience life on my own in my first semester. And while I definitely had my trials and tribulations, and there's some things that I would probably change if I could go back and do it again, I think that I am the person that I am today because of my first year at school, and in particular my first semester and the experiences that I had and getting acclimated to Blacksburg.
Okay, so you're all in that headspace of where you were that first semester. I don't even want to go there because that's a long time ago for me, but I can remember it too. But all right, and so by the way, we're recording this on the last day of classes of fall semester 2023. And so tomorrow you have a reading day. We didn't have those when I was a student. That's a great thing, reading day. And then finals begin. So I know it's a stressful time for you too, but right around the corner is you'll be leaving campus for almost a month for your winter break. So just in terms of your headspace and heading back to where you're going to spend winter break, most likely with family. What did you need then from your family, or is there a lesson that something that happened that, boy, that's a lesson that maybe that other parents need to hear about of a situation that you can share? Who has something to tell about that? All right,
I'll step up to the plate. I think the big thing that I experienced after my freshman fall semester was going back and kind of taking an opportunity to recharge. There was a lot of weight on my shoulders, I felt, and I was very depleted coming out of my first semester. And being able to go back home and experience a little bit slower of a lifestyle when I was at home, I got to spend a lot more time with family. I didn't necessarily have to worry about having meals cooked for me, which was a huge, huge plus. But honestly, just being able to get back into a familiar environment after spending the previous four and some change months in kind of one that was very different to me, allowed me to sort of step back, look at what I needed to adjust and change while I went into my second semester, and then allowed me to really attack it in a way that I didn't during my time during the fall.
So here's a question for someone in the panel here. In August of that first year, you were a high school student and you were the star of the show. You had just gloriously walked across the graduation in high school and were accepted at Virginia Tech. You're a high achiever already. And then you went off to college and you kissed your family goodbye. And then in August, and then you come dragging home in December. How had you changed between August and December? And well, the reason I ask this is because every student has changed a little bit. And so how had you changed? And then kind of that leads into what should families expect from your, relating to your own experience of how you had changed?
So with my experience, I came in biology and pre-medical sciences, and now I am in marketing. And I do still plan to finish my pre-medical track because I do love science, but I feel like the biggest change for me that first semester was I realized that not only in my college experience did I want something different than what I first had that semester, but also just my life goals and what I felt like my purpose was. And so even though, like I said, I do really love science, I would say that's my biggest thing. Medicine runs in my family. And so I think that was a really big change for my family as well, because ever since I was, very young, I thought I was on the same page as my parents. And then I sort of grew out of it when I came to college. So I feel like that was a big change that I had.
Anyone else?
I think we were joking about it, listening to what Dr. Caldwell had to say, but college is a strange kind of middle ground of being an adult with training wheels, right? So it's this new sense of independence that we all gained coming out of high school, where you still have the flexibility to kind of experiment with yourself and what your interests are, just like Faith mentioned. And so I think, what families can do best in that experience is just listen. A lot of what we went through and those big, huge changes are something that we did without family nearby or without those support systems that we had throughout high school. So I think just being open to those changes that may have happened that first semester and being encouraging in terms of heading back in the spring.
All right, and there's a general question. What is and maybe your family might watch this if they catch wind that there's this wonderful video living on the New Student and Family Programs website or YouTube channel. What's one thing that your family has done for you as a partner in your time at school that you really appreciate, or that was surprising, or that you expected but has been great? What's one way that your specific family has partnered with you and has kind of helped you succeed or feel better about your experience? Or
So for me, as somebody who came from quite a ways away from Blacksburg to go to school here, and being the oldest sibling in my family, my parents were definitely a little stressed out, my mom in particular, shout out, when I came to school. And at times I felt like not that she was overbearing, but there was often a lot of constant checking in and making sure that I was, okay and having a good time. And in retrospect, it was greatly appreciated, but I think there is a certain value in the college experience to becoming independent and being able to kind of come out of the nest for the first time and learn to fly. I think you have to, there's a very thin line that needs to be treaded where you want to maintain that level of communication and stay in contact and provide support to your student during their first semester at college. But you need to prevent becoming a helicopter parent, and you need to sort of allow them to experience things for the first time on their own, and then learn from their mistakes and adapt and become the person that they are destined to be. And I feel in my case, This is something that I expressed with my own family members. And since then, I have found a lot more academic success. I feel a lot more comfortable with myself and with my environment here in Blacksburg. And my parents, from their perspective, they've seen that I am becoming more comfortable, and it has been a product of kind of letting me experience things on my own. So I would just say being able to find that balance between checking in and making sure that you are providing support while also allowing somebody to learn on their own.
Good answer, good answer. Okay, so this one, I want Francisco to start this one. And it's sort of our last question that we have for our panel, because we are running up against our time. But Dr. Caldwell mentioned about really encouraging or helping the family, helping the student to advocate for themselves and seeking out the resources and the help that they might need. So Francisco, in particular, I want to start with you on this one, because I think you have a unique story to tell. How have you learned to advocate for yourself, especially if you think back to your first year, but you can even extend it into your time now? How have you learned to advocate for yourself, get what you need as a student here at Virginia Tech?
So, great question, Barry. One of the greatest strengths that I've gotten through my family is that I'm able to solve things, solve problems, and kind of really get it done. And how has that helped me advocate for myself is that it has allowed me to have more of a voice and not really be scared to speak up if I need help in a class, or if I'm doing something wrong, and kind of telling myself, oh, I need to improve on something. And more than that, it let me identify kind of my strengths and weaknesses. And for example, one of my greatest strengths is that I'm a very good people person. So I really like talking with my professors. I really like connecting with them. I still talk to some professors from freshman year, and I kind of use that to make myself known to the teacher and kind of help me that with my academic, because at the end, my goal here is to finish, get my degree, and go out into the real world. And by me using that strength of getting to know people and connecting with them, I'm able to take the classes and enjoy them, because I'm able to understand the people who teach it. I'm able to understand the teacher as a person and as an instructor, and see the meaning with his teachings. Yeah.
Anyone else? How have you learned to advocate for yourself?
Yeah, I'll add one thing to that. I think, like I mentioned earlier, the myths that can kind of be perpetuated. I think having the strength to come home during winter break and say to your home friends or to your family members, at the holidays, who are saying, oh my gosh, that must have been the best semester of your whole life, and having the strength and the voice for yourself to say, hey, actually, it wasn't. It was really hard. That was advocating for myself, because it stopped those narratives of oh, they're going to keep telling me how great their college experience is, and I just came from one that was really difficult. So standing up for myself in that sense, and advocating for my own experience was something that I learned to be really valuable in those instances.
Great answer. We know that you're just 4 students. We've got over 7,000 first-year students here who'll be heading home next week, at the end of next week after exams. Last chance for speaking to the entire Virginia Tech community, a bit of wisdom to give the families. Their students are coming home. Let's hear your one little nugget of wisdom for each of our families. Who's got one? Who's got a nugget of wisdom?
I know that. I think just patience. Rebecca mentioned those clothes piling up on the floor. I was definitely guilty of that. And I think just having grace and some patience in those moments is a good nugget to take away.
Everybody agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to end it. It is the season of grace and patience. How about that? We want to thank you to our student panel, to Emily, to Francisco, to Faith, and to Seth. Thank you so much for sitting in and listening and sharing your experiences and your wisdom. We encourage our families who are watching to make sure that you're subscribed to the Hokie Family Hub, which has just a constant flow of this exact kind of information. In fact, I think there's about 25 posts that you're going to be seeing about how to support your student over winter break, and then over spring break, and then over summer break. And a lot of this repeats itself. It never hurts to watch it some more. Also, I recommend subscribing to the Virginia Tech News, the Student Affairs News. Subscribe to everything that you can, because there's so many great resources out there that you can help your student to connect with. So we want to say to everyone, good luck on exams, and happy holidays. And we'll see you next year. Thanks for
Bye.
watching, everybody. Send any questions you've got to families@vt.edu. We're now going to awkwardly end the recording by clicking around. Okay. Bye. Oh, no.